Hello, my lovelies. It's Susanna, and today I want to talk about the most common mistake that I can read in my comment section. Because every time I make a video about square roots and I want to calculate the square root of 4, and I say in my video the square root of 4 is 2. There are so many comments saying you are doing the things wrong, the square root of 4 is 2 and negative 2. No, it is not. If you want to calculate the square root of 4, it is really just the positive result, just 2. If you want to calculate the square root of 16, it is just 4. The square root of 25 is just 5, not the negative solution. I'm going to talk about where this mistake comes from, but maybe let's take a look at the graph of the square root of x. If we draw the graph of this function here, x-axis, y-axis, it looks something like this. This is the square root of x. And if I want to calculate the square root of 4, so my x equals 4, then I can see that here is just one result, and that is the 2. My graph is only in the positive area here, so no negative values from the square root of x. So I cannot stress that enough. If you just want to calculate the square root of a number, your result is always going to be positive. But where does this mistake then come from that people say, if you take the square root of a number, you get a positive and a negative result? Well, that comes from the following. If you want to solve an equation for x, let's say you have x squared equals 4, then you have two results. You have 2 and negative 2, because 2 squared equals 4, yes, but also negative 2 squared equals 4. So if you want to solve an equation, a quadratic equation, you get two results. But that is a completely different problem compared to this one where you just want to calculate a square root. So here it is actually the case that you get two solutions. But where does this come from? Because if we have an equation, we usually say, yeah, let's take the square root on both sides of the equation, and then we get two solutions, a positive one and a negative one. I want to go through this equation now with you step by step to really see in detail where these two solutions come from. Okay, then let's solve this equation for x. Maybe we start on the right side because we've now learned that if we take the square root of a number, our result is going to be positive and only positive. So the square root of 4 just equals 2. On the left side, it is a little bit more complicated because we have x in here. But in general, we also want to have the square root of something. So we have to make sure on the left side as well that this result is going to be positive. If we just cancel the square root and the square out and write x just here, it's not yet correct, so we have to add something. But let's say we do it like this. Then we don't know if this is going to be positive because we don't know x. X could be a positive number like 3 and everything would be okay, but it could also be a negative number like negative 5, and then we would have something negative on the left side. And no, it's not possible because the square root of something needs to be positive. So how can we make sure that this on the left side is going to be positive? How can we make a negative number positive? By taking the absolute value of this number. The absolute value of negative 5 is just 5. The absolute value of negative 3, for example, makes this number positive. It's going to be 3. And if your number is already positive in your absolute value, then everything is okay and the number just stays positive. So the absolute value makes everything positive. And that's why, to make sure that the left side is positive, we take the absolute value. Okay, so now we have to solve an equation with an absolute value of x. How can we do that? By making a case distinction. We take a look at a first case, and we're going to take a look at a second case. The first case is if everything in my absolute value is already positive. So if my x is greater or equal to 0, this is what I take a look at in my first case. And the second case is the rest. So what happens if my x is going to be negative? Okay, so what happens if my x is greater or equal to 0? Well, we've just seen that if the things in your absolute value are already positive, then you can just leave the absolute value out and write the things in here as they've been. So if my x is already positive, then I can just leave out the absolute value and just take my x and my equal to, and this is my first solution, my first positive solution. I found one. And now where is this negative solution? Trust me, it comes now in our second case. Because what happens if my x is going to be negative? So what happens if this, what I have in my absolute value, is negative? Let's see it here. We have a negative number in our absolute value. And if we want to get rid of the absolute value, if we want to apply it, then we only have to multiply this number here inside by -1 to get to the positive result. Same here. If we multiply the negative number in here by -1, the result is going to be positive. So this means for our negative case here that we know our x is negative. So to be able to leave out the absolute value, we have to multiply what is inside by -1. So we multiply the x by -1, then we are allowed to leave out the absolute value, and on the other side we have our 2. See it now? Because of this -1, we have our negative result. So if we want to solve for x, we just have to divide both sides of the equation by -1. This cancels out, only our x is left, and here we get our negative result. So this is the long version and the long explanation why we get 2 solutions if we want to solve a quadratic equation. And usually you don't write all of this down anymore. You just go from here, say I take the square root, so I know I get 2 solutions, and we're done. I hope it helped you. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. I wish you a wonderful day, and I hope to see you in one of my next videos. Take care.